It's a sleepy start to March. Kind of wanted to put my head down on the table there at the media section and take a little nap, but Illinois came out that way after all the talk, Derek Piper, of, hey, it's March, it's time to put it all together. This wasn't unexpected because I wasn't all that into this game coming in. I don't think a lot of Illini fans were pumped for this game, but Illinois has to have a different kind of mentality. And it was just a tough game to watch, I think, for Illinois. 60-55 defeat Penn State. I'm Jeremy Werner. He's Derek Piper. What do you make of that, Derek? All this talk yesterday of, hey, we're coming out focused, we're coming out with a lot of energy. And Brad Underwood said during shoot around, didn't have a lot of energy in this. So if you have this kind of performance in the postseason, you'll be going home early again. I think that's the concern. Though I do have to say, it's the Big Ten. Penn State deserves credit. They've been giving tougher teams a lot of tough games, including Wisconsin. Wisconsin beat them by what, 51-49, similar small possession game, low possession game. But Illinois finds a way to eke it out, especially with the defensive end in the second half. But not a very encouraging performance tonight.
Not an inspiring one after a very good showing in Ann Arbor. And I think you were hoping that you would build on that, further your momentum, take care of business, and this would be a fairly sweat-free victory down the stretch, at least. Respect to Penn State. They've given some teams some challenges, even going to Madison and only losing by 3. They played well in their home building. And I do want to – I can start off by saying, they defended Kofi really well. They had a great game plan. They bet on Illinois making enough shots around him, and certain guys, DeMonte Williams, Coleman Hawkins, guys, they really sagged off of, and we'll talk more about that. But I do think that Illinois' approach and just Brad admitting that they were flat and not having even a good lead up to this game kind of contradicts a little bit of what they're saying. Hey, it's March, it's urgency. We're talking about Final Four, and then you don't really show up for this game. I know it was kind of a hard game to get up for because it's in the middle of the Big Ten grind. Wisconsin wins at home. So there's kind of okay, we understand it's unlikely, still possible, but unlikely that the Big Ten title is still on the line, and Iowa's coming up next. So after a lot of marquee matchups to kind of have this one slotted in there, you flirted with taking a quad 3 loss that really would have knocked you. That's one of those that knocks you a seed line. It takes you to the 5 seed, and this kind of performance in a 5-12 game gets you beat usually. So I understand why. We can talk more. Just this team is a little untrustworthy, honestly. I think that's one thing that fans are frustrated with.
Yeah, I get some anxiety of fans. And I think a lot of it has to do with the last 2 years, not being able to make the NCAA tournament or play in the NCAA tournament 2 years ago due to the pandemic. And then last year, the early exit. So fairly or unfairly, this team has a lot of pressure on it because it is a very good team. And we've seen against Arizona and Purdue that they can play with some of the best teams in the country. And against Wisconsin, the Big Ten champion, you crushed them at home, right? Like it wasn't even close. Michigan State, another top half Big Ten team. Michigan, you played extremely well. So you see these signs, but you just don't see the consistency. I don't know if the Big Ten lends to consistency, but the team you have playing on Sunday, Iowa is really starting to do what Illinois did a little bit last year, which is going into March with all this momentum, feeling great about itself, shooting up the seed rankings. Illinois is just kind of holding firm, holding steady. They haven't taken off, and that's okay. I mean, Illinois is still on the 4 seed line. They're still one of the best teams in the country right now. But yeah, it just feels like they just haven't found that consistent gear where it's like, yep, that's definitely a team that's going to make the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, which I think is a measure of success for this team.
Yeah, and you said it right there. If this team doesn't get upset in the second round last year and they go on the run they probably should have went on, we're probably not having the same kind of angst. You would say, it's Penn State. This team, when the lights are brightest, will get up and play their best basketball. But throughout the year, it wasn't a one-off where this was the only game where they kind of didn't really have it or didn't really fight when things got hairy in the second half. That's kind of been a trend for this team, whether it be Northwestern on Super Bowl Sunday or not getting up at Rutgers. There have been some of those signs that are still discouraging, where on the flip side, you have the upside to play with in Arizona, and you didn't have Curbelo in that game, or to battle Purdue in the overtime or beat Michigan on the road. Those are where you've seen what this team ultimately can be. And I think the way they played offensively at Michigan, they could have scored with anybody, like Gonzaga, anybody in that tournament. So that's where you don't want to sacrifice what this team can be versus kind of having these letdowns, these lulls, or still those scoring droughts. And just like the lack of energy, I think that is something that's controllable. That's where some leadership needs to kick in. You got to be able to just, be able to rev up the motor. It's another thing if you're not making shots or whatnot. So I understand why it is tied to last year, and it is something they're going to have to prove on out. It's an interesting balance though. You don't want to peak too early, and you don't want to put everything into not the ultimate goal, which I think that they're focused on the right things, but it is some of those building the habits and the tendencies that carry over once you get there.
And I think the other side of this, which fans probably don't feel right now, is you can't get too frustrated with an ugly win. I mean, you found a way to win. I wanted to mention 22-9, you got out rebounded in the second half. And my guy, Casey Boguslaw, is usually a baseball guy, sent the stat out that Illinois went without a defensive rebound for 10 minutes. Now, there was 3 turnovers in there. There was some unlucky bounces, but Illinois just couldn't grab the ball part of the time and then just putting bodies on people. So that's bothersome, right? And that allowed Penn State to kind of stick in the game. Fortunately, they missed some open shots. Not a great shooting team. But so they came back down to earth in the second half. But you have found a way to win these games when Kofi Cockburn's on the court. They don't have a bad loss when Kofi Cockburn is on the court. It's pretty amazing. Your bad losses this year are Marquette. Cincinnati, I guess, is one, but that was the first game he was back. But during Big Ten play, you're talking about all those close, kind of ugly wins. Even Nebraska wasn't a very good win. Northwestern, obviously, both those games weren't very pretty wins. But when you've had them on the court, the teams you've lost to are Ohio State, at Rutgers, which was like the hottest team in the country at the time, at Purdue, right? So and Purdue here at home. So it's interesting. I don't know what the correlation is. Maybe it's just Kofi Cockburn gets you 11-6, even on a not great night that you don't get otherwise. But I think you can still feel like, hey, we still won the game. That's what Brad Underwood said after the game. We can find a way to win ugly. We can also find a way to win pretty like we did in Michigan on Sunday. So if you want to be optimistic, still found a way to win an ugly game, which first round of the NCAA tournament in 2005, a certain Illinois team did the same thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of the Big Ten. I mean, you can point back to great Illinois teams who have played a one-off close game with Northwestern, but ultimately found a way to win. And even last year, for all the trust that team had built up going into March, now ultimately it faltered in terms of them getting bounced. But they had to go into overtime at Nebraska, and Iowa had to hit one from almost the logo against Northwestern here in this building. So you have those type of games, those types of moments. And yeah, securing a top 3 seed in the Big Ten tournament is a nice feather in your cap. And the fact that you're still on that 4 seed line with a chance to climb back into a 3 seed would be really a good opportunity to try to avoid that 1 seed even as early as the Sweet 16. So yeah, I think that you can nitpick it certain ways and try to. You could be concerned if you wanted to be. You could be encouraged that they just found a way to get it done. And I mean, let's be honest. Iowa being super senior night here in Champaign, Illinois is going to be up for that game. I'd be shocked if they weren't. I mean, we can talk about, we will at the end, how Iowa is playing, but yeah, I mean, they found a way to get it done, but there are some concerns too. I don't want to brush those off. It's kind of that interesting balance.
It's just not a great team. Like, it's not just, and I don't know if there is in the Big Ten. Wisconsin finds a way to win ugly game after game after game, and their fans are fine with it because they got a Big Ten championship, and they're, obviously vastly superior to what they thought they would be in the preseason. So just an interesting thing that Illinois is going through where this hasn't been the prettiest.
I'll pose this question I mean, I think the Iowa performance would be, if you win handily or convincingly, that would be a great trend going into March. But it's funny how if Illinois goes on some crazy run and wins the Big Ten tournament, you might say, oh no, we used all our gas just like last year. But then if you don't win it, then you're saying we haven't peaked yet. We haven't hit our strides. It's the weird things. At
the end of the day, Illinois is 14-5 in the Big Ten right now. And because of a fortunate year for Wisconsin, I mean, I don't want to take away anything from them, but a fortunate year for them in close games, you're probably not going to win a Big Ten title, barring Nebraska having a huge upset again and being able to beat Iowa on Sunday. So they're still 14-5. They're still finding a way to put together a really, really good resume. And if you can put together another win Sunday, that's one of their best wins of the year if they can beat Iowa. We'll get into that game here in a little bit. I do want to credit Micah Shrewsbury, who's been impressive in his first year. Penn State is not really a good team at 7-12, but Jalen Pickett, former Illini target Jalen Pickett, was a really tough matchup. And I think Penn State is a tough matchup, even though they're not a good team, because they have big guards. They got a 4 who can shoot, and Seth Lundy. Greg Lee made a 3 or 2 tonight. So they had some of those guys. John Hara can battle with Kofi a little bit. So I do think they can pose some tough matchups for Illinois. But I thought Shrewsbury did a fantastic job defensively, just daring DeMonte Williams and Coleman Hawkins to shoot. Coleman took him up on it and didn't shoot very well. Some hesitation with some of his shots. DeMonte had a lot of hesitation early, but eventually comes up big, 14 points, 4 of 10 from three. Not the prettiest night from him, 4 of 11 from the floor, but he leads the team in scoring for the first time in his career with 14 points and a season high 4 threes. You don't really want to, I think Penn State will live with 11 DeMonte Williams field goal attempts, but they did a great job of. Kofi Cockburn had 7 attempts. Alfonso Plummer only had 5 attempts tonight. Trent Frazier only 6 attempts. He got hot at one point in the second half, but they really held those guys in check. How are they able to do that, Derek? And is another team going to be able to do that?
It does provide a blueprint for other teams to try to mimic that. And I think that Hara being able to front the post was one dynamic of it. In terms of one thing Illinois has done well of here recently is get that middle post up where it's not on one side to where the help can get there easily. Now, the problem was because whether it was DeMonte at the 4, Coleman at the 4, even when Luke Goody was out there a little bit, those guys are cheating into the paint. And Penn State, kind of in terms of their roster construction, has some long athletic wings and guys that at the 3-4 spot that can recover at least well enough, or they were just daring DeMonte to shoot. We saw that a bunch, but they were getting in there with Kofi and just providing a wall from not being able to throw that entry pass. So was it through the first half entirely, or most of the first half Kofi only had 1 field goal attempt?
Yeah, I think it was through about the first 12 minutes. He was 1 of 3 in the first half. And I think part of that was Penn State, but part of it was Illinois to get him the ball. Like somehow you got to get him the ball. Even if, Derek, I think that's a guard attacking the rim, missing a shot, get Kofi a putback. That was his first field goal in the second half, was Grandison attacking the rim, missed the shot, but it allowed Kofi to get an offensive rebound and putback to get going.
Right. And Brad mentioned that the offense didn't execute when they saw that kind of action, that the guys in DeMonte and Coleman hesitated at times and the ball kind of stuck. But it was maybe one of the first times we've seen this year that we've talked a lot about pick your poison. That narrative's been out there a lot about Illinois' offense with their 3-point shooting surrounding Kofi. They were able to pick to blitz Kofi, but also stay on Plummer and stay on Frazier. So that was a good game plan that was executed well. Can other teams do that to where they can stick on Illinois shooters, but leave a couple of guys that, look, DeMonte had made, I think he's 10 for 33 now, and that's with 4 for 10 tonight, 10 for 33 since the start of February from 3. Coleman's only made 2 threes since his last 11 games. So it's not, and we've talked a little bit about this, in recent weeks, it's not 4 gotta guard him weapons around Kofi anymore. So the choice is, I don't want to say easy, but it's a clear one to make if you can execute it right, and Penn State did execute it tonight.
Yeah, and I think that's the key part is Penn State planned it well, blitz Kofi, but make sure you're not helping off of Frazier and Plummer, but the players got to execute, and I thought they executed it very well. And if another team can do that, yeah, it's a concern for Illinois, and I thought that's where you needed Andre Curbelo, and you didn't get Andre Curbelo playing well tonight. 1 of 5 from the floor, 3 turnovers in just 16 minutes. Just didn't think, like, he's kind of the X factor that can stop those things. And Penn State also took advantage of Illinois' lack of size at guard with all their post ups with Jalen Pickett, who's just kind of dicing them up, posting them up. So I thought Andre Curbelo is kind of the guy who can, be a factor against that, but he just wasn't able to finish around the rim or create for teammates.
Yeah, 1 for 5 from the field and took that off balance shot right before halftime that I know that wasn't really the ideal play that you want. I don't know that he got to his spot in time based on where the clock was, and had a bad stretch there in the second half where he was underneath the basket and threw a fancy, like, kind of no look pass right to Penn State, then fouled deep in the backcourt, and he was out of sorts. He wasn't anywhere close to what we saw, at Michigan. And that's the Bella roller coaster that you continue to ride with him, and you're hoping it levels out, and you're hoping that he figures things out. I just still with him when he goes through that, I get that it's part of his DNA. I'm sure that those critics out there for him just would like to see a change in approach. When some of those mistakes are him trying to do too much, or saying that, I got to make the play on this particular attempt. I'm not willing to play for the next play, or not be too fancy. And the fact that he doesn't adjust sometimes is it's frustrating. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, he's got to let the game come to him a little bit more. And so you don't want to take away, like, that's where it's so difficult with him. You don't want to take away his aggression, his playmaking, because it can be fascinating at times. But I thought what stood out about Michigan, Derek, is he didn't force things. He just kind of let it come to him. He ran a pick and roll. Kofi sealed, and he's like, "Oh, I got an open layup. I'm going to take an open layup." He wasn't really forcing some of those shots. So that's what he has to find. Jacob Grandison hit a big 3 late, also 5 rebounds tonight. Do want to give credit to Alfonso Plummer. Has to be a season high, 6 rebounds, even though he didn't score much tonight. 5 points on 1 of 5 shooting. He did get some rebounds tonight. It was a big positive in the plus minus for whatever that is worth. But Jacob Grandison has a shoulder injury. It was a shoulder sprain. Left the game with a minute 30 left. But Underwood just said sprain. So you're worried about collarbone, worried about separation, something like that. The early word, maybe something can change, but Brad Underwood said after the game it's a sprain. But if he's not there for Iowa, or if he's not there for the Big Ten tournament, obviously he's a big loss, because you're talking about helping off on people.
Yeah.
Jacob Grandison, you can't help off of him, because 2 for 4 from 3 tonight. We know how good he is from 3.
Yeah, absolutely. A guy that is knocked down from the corner. He's able to get you some clutch buckets, some rebounds. He can be an effort player when he's playing up to his capacity. He's one of those guys that's right place, right time type of guy to get an offensive rebound, and certainly a veteran that has a lot of trust. And Brad Underwood's talked about that all season. So if he does miss time, that certainly is going to hurt you. It would, of course, you'd assume Coleman Hawkins slotting into the starting lineup at the 4, slide DeMonte to the 3, with RJ already out. We don't know when RJ's coming back with Bossman. I mean, it just hurts Illinois' depth, particularly if you are going to compound Grandison being out, missing time, and RJ, who's not back yet, but I know he's in shoot around today. So hopefully that is a sign that he's not that far away, but not a good time to be shorthanded, obviously, when you're just that close from postseason play.
Yeah, I mean, it's taking away your depth, right? Like that's a big concern. And Luke Goody didn't really play well tonight, hasn't gotten consistent playing time. But that Bello could be big too. You might have to go small, which is a concern if you go against a team like Penn State. All right, Derek, let's talk a little bit about Iowa coming up. As we are recording this, Iowa is smoking Michigan 67-54. This is midway through the second half. So that's going to be 8 of 9. Barring some ridiculous comeback from Michigan, who's, as we saw, Michigan's a very talented team, but Keegan Murray is making a push. I know some people think Johnny Davis already won the Big Ten Player of the Year award, and I think he will win it, but I think Keegan Murray deserves all kinds of consideration, given the run Iowa's having, given the consistency he's had, far better than Johnny Davis or even Kofi Cockburn, to be honest with you. So this is a tough matchup. They're starting to defend better, Derek. You said it. 5th in conference play right now in defensive efficiency, which is so unlike a Fran McCaffrey team. There are some matchups I like for Illinois in the post, especially against Rebraca. I think Illinois' guards can guard the heck out of Iowa's guards, but we know those Murray brothers can be really, really tough.
They're good, man. They're good. They're athletic. And it was actually, I think Iowa did its best job in the paint when they took Rebraca out and had Chris Murray on Kofi. And that was another situation when you think back to that game. They did a nice job of trying to force the ball out of Kofi's hands. They doubled him on every single touch. And that was another situation of him. Tonight was forcing Kofi not to catch the ball if they could. I think in this situation, it'll be interesting to see how they approach it. Being able to, crash inside and make him kick it out. Obviously, Illinois does have shooters, but their defense, for them to be number 1 in the Big Ten in turnovers forced during conference play, something to be said for that. And Illinois has flash times of turnover issues. And just a Fran McCaffrey team being 5th in the league in defensive efficiency is not something we've seen here of late. So, with Keegan and where he's playing Iowa into, and the fact that they're ranked and they're going to be a decent seed. This was a team that lost Garza and Wieskamp and Nunji and Frederick. Lost a lot, and they're on a roll right now. So that's a dangerous team. Obviously, winning like that in Ann Arbor and coming in here with a lot of confidence and momentum. So if Illinois, it goes without saying, Illinois have to be a lot better, a lot more amped for that game than they were today. But matchup-wise, I think that Kofi should be able to have a good game because of the matchup, especially against Rebraca. The guard play with, I would take Trent Frazier and Alfonso Plummer over Bohannon and some of those guys that they got in the backcourt. But, Keegan Murray at the 4 spot's a tough matchup. Going to need a good game out of Coleman Hawkins and DeMonte Williams. But yeah, credit to Iowa for what they put together.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, tonight you gained a lot with this win, even though it was a little bit uglier, right? Like you got the double bye, you got a top 3 finish in the Big Ten, which is a feather in your cap. It's good for recruiting, all of that, and you kind of stay on the 4 line, right? And you avoid a quad 3 loss more than anything. You got something to gain against Iowa. I think if you beat Iowa, you're not going below a 4 seed. That's another quad 1 win, one of your most impressive wins on your team sheet. 2 of those against Iowa would be pretty big. But also, I think if you want to get to the 3 line, which we think is really important getting to the NCAA tournament, if you want to get to the second weekend and maybe even avoid just a really good 6 seed in the second round, like this, I think you need to get. You need to get this one and then probably another one, and then you might be thinking you can play into a 3 seed at the Big Ten tournament. So I think there's a lot to play for. Plus, it's just a rivalry, right? Illinois, I think, has won 4 straight against Iowa in this rivalry since really the first big game between those opponents when Andres Feliz was ripping the ball from Luka Garza. But this is a big rivalry game. I think the State Farm Center is going to be pumped up. And for both these teams, Derek, there's a lot to play for. Iowa trying to get to that 4 seed and Illinois just trying to continue its kind of stretch of dominance here in the rivalry.
Yeah, and how memorable that Illinois-Iowa game was here in the 2020 season, and how much we look back on that, and to have a rematch of sorts. There's some characters that are pretty important. Iowa being in the NBA, and Luka is he still with the Pistons or G League? And I'm not sure, but some of the characters have left the scene, but you still have the same coaches. You still have the McCaffrey brothers and
Connor versus DeMonte.
Yeah, Connor versus DeMonte, and the fact. Yeah, Trent in that mix, and the fact that it's Trent and DeMonte's last game in this building is a really big deal. And who knows with Kofi ultimately? Who knows with a guy like Jacob Grandison if he will be available? But to have 2 ranked teams allowing the table, teams that are capable of going second weekend, I think Iowa's starting to prove that. And we've been thinking that for Illinois for a while now. But I fully agree with you. I think that it would help to boost your floor in terms of a seeding. And I think you do need to get to at least Saturday, maybe even Sunday, to feel really good about a 3 seed. It depends on how some other things shake out, but a lot to play for. And I mean, you just want to go into Indy feeling like you're playing some pretty darn good basketball, because that's just the sand in the hourglass is starting to come down. You got to, every game matters that much more, and you just want to be playing as well as you possibly can be when postseason play hits.
Yeah, so you got Trent, DeMonte, Alfonso Plummer, who's had one of the best transfer seasons we've ever seen from an Illinois player. Will be interesting to see if he gets all Big Ten, which we vote for here on Sunday. He'll be in the mix when considering him. But from what we hear, Jacob Grandison is going to go through the ceremony, just kind of like some of the other guys from football have done. He could come back for another year, but I mean, I wouldn't blame the guy. If we get to talk to him, I think we will on Saturday. We'll ask him, do you plan on coming back or not? I think the guy's 23 years old. I think he's probably going to want to move on with his life. That's a heck of a senior class, right? I mean, we know what Trent and DeMonte have meant to this program. And if Illinois wanted to make some news, Josh Whitman, you could do this. We're going to if you finish your career top 5 in scoring all time, we're putting your jersey in the rafters. If you want to make some kind of new rule to get Trent up, that could be it. And you can announce it here on senior night. How about that? But Alfonso Plummer, Jacob Grandison, 2 transfers that have made a huge impact. Alfonso Plummer, where would this team be without him this year? And then Jacob Grandison, the last 2 years, has been a catalyst for them as well. So just a phenomenal senior class. And we'll see if Kofi is involved in that or not. That's a discussion for another day, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we brought this up before, talking about you lose Alan Griffin, you have Jacob Grandison be able to come in and take over a similar type of role, a shot maker, a rebounder, in terms of like not making as many mistakes, he's more trustworthy, and that's been a nice added bonus. And just have a veteran guy that's, like you said, 23, probably I think he's turned 24 here pretty soon. And if he did want to move on, and earlier in the year, I'm not saying that this has been taken away from him. I think he's got a chance to play professionally somewhere. I mean, he's talented enough for sure, but he's given you a lot in terms of just a steady and impact, a guy that can make shots, and that's been very, very valuable to help both these guys really get to where Brad wanted to be, which was an older team, an older veteran team, guys that had been through some wars And then, that's what's usually wins in the Big Ten. And then Alfonso Plummer to be as prolific a 3-point shooter as there is in college basketball. I said, we were talking about on the radio, is it as lethal a shooter, in terms of when he's on the heater as it gets in Illinois history. And Lon, reminded me that I didn't mention Corey Bradford. And I saw Corey sitting down there. I don't know if he was looking for me, but yeah, I mean, Plummer just to be
JCL in that mix.
Yeah.
No, he had one good year.
You're right. Just for Plummer to be in that conversation, it says a lot. And yeah, he's, in December, his numbers were ridiculous. And even just here of late, first halves that he's had, those type of eruptions. And none of us would be surprised if he advanced you around because of just some kind of crazy shooting display.
I expect it at some point. I expect him to hit 5 3-pointers in one game and be the difference. And maybe it's Sunday against Iowa. Maybe it's against Purdue in the Big Ten tournament semifinals. If they get that far, he's got that capability. So I know you kind of look ahead. People are looking ahead to, we can get this guy that's top 40 prospect, or we can get this player. Like, you're already looking ahead to the offseason, how Illinois does this. I get it. But these guys, despite a flaw here, flaw there, have meant so much to this program that it's going to be a cool night to see them honored. All right, for Derek Piper, I'm Jeremy Werner. Illinois finds a way to win an ugly one, 60-55 against Penn State, mostly with their defense, as Penn State went almost 6 minutes without a bucket towards the end of the game. But Illinois finds a way to win. They're now 21-8, 14-5 in the Big Ten. Illinois now 43-16 in the Big Ten the last 3 years. I think is it stat 28-6 in their last 34 games against Big Ten opponents. It's pretty just like when you see these numbers, Derek, it's just, I get it. It's not the prettiest win, but the amount of winning they've done in the Big Ten is insane.
You won't trade that. You won't trade that type of success rate. And if you're able to couple it with banners, a satisfying run of success there in the NCAA tournament, then this will be one of those eras of Illinois basketball that I'm not saying is going to stop after this year, but will really be looked back on and held in high regard, which it deserves to be based on, that run through a Big Ten. That's a really, really good league, obviously.
Yeah. All right, for Derek Piper, I'm Jeremy Werner. Thank you for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Give us a follow, rating, review, wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. If you want to check us out there, give us a follow. We put all the videos up there, cut up some of the clips as well. You can follow us there. Helps us out. And check out Illini Inquirer for the latest on this basketball win. I'll have player grades, Derek will have his takeaways, and I'll have a follow-up piece from DeMonte Williams talking about kind of getting disrespected or dorked, as Brad Underwood likes to say. We'll have that coming up. All right, everybody have a great day. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you next time on the Illini Inquirer podcast.